Springtime is finally here, and with the melting of the snow and the beautiful flowers rising up from the earth, something else has arisen. Something much more darker, and something very dangerous. And what this would happen to be is the HELLRAISER Spring Slaughter. Now, something very interesting about this is that it's actually written by Lena Wachowski, the person who wrote all the different Matrix movies, and the only reason that I know this is because of one of you awesome viewers, Jerry's Stories. So if any of you see him down in the comments, please say hello to this man. He's always bringing the good information, and also check out his channel, as he actually writes some very interesting sci-fi books, and it's something that I personally very much enjoy. So Jerry, thank you so much, and you are very appreciated. Now, something else very interesting about the writer of this is that she's actually written quite a few different things for Clive Barker. She's written Clive Barker's Book of the Damned, as well as the Spring Slaughter, but on top of that, she's also written some of the Marvel comics that he's done. Ecto Kid, something that I haven't had the graces to actually read yet, but something I do want to get to in the future, and I just found that very interesting, as the cenobites in the Matrix simulation are both a tad bit similar, with their secret world sitting in between, and these people just kind of trying to seek out these alternate dimensions and trying to figure out the truth of the inner workings of the earth. And I'm just kind of wondering how these things kind of tie together. But I gotta say, HELLRAISER Spring Slaughter is definitely one of the better ones out of the HELLRAISER comics, as instead of a bunch of different short stories, it is actually one coherent story all the way through, about these three people who have actually all escaped hell for themselves, people who have solved the puzzle box, who are just kind of riding on the knowledge of this man named Isidore Kowalski, who has actually escaped not once, not twice, but 3 times. And he actually went on to write an entire book about the structure of Leviathan and all things underneath it. And with this awesome story, we're also going to be getting some very good artwork, and I gotta say, this is probably one of the more pricier books that I've ever gotten. Being about almost $50, I gotta say, it was definitely worth it. It's a nice little collector's item, and it came in a really good condition, and it's something that I'm just so excited to finally be getting into. What we're going to be dealing with here is these 3 main characters kind of rounding up all the different configurations: poetry, puzzle boxes, any kind of configuration that can possibly get their hands on, and what they're going to do is actually destroy these things, as that actually brings a great deal of pain to Leviathan. It's like sticking little symbolic knives into the big black diamond god that's hovered over hell for all eternity. And it's the first glance of hope that I've really ever seen in any of these HELLRAISER books, besides possibly the cowboy story that we did all those years ago, where he basically just didn't get his chance to open the box. He lost a bet. And if you haven't seen that video, go check that out. But overall, I thought the HELLRAISER Spring Slaughter was incredibly awesome. So we're gonna split this into 3 different episodes, so over this month, just kind of keep your eye out for that. And where the story will begin is in hell itself, as we're watching Leviathan come to the stop, doing something that is never done before, and giving this Isidore Kowalski a chance to actually escape. It never rests, set to its task, turning like a millstone, wet with blood and greased with fat, crushing flesh and grinding bone and gristle. Its light fades, and then dies, and for one excruciating instant, all of hell hangs frozen, still and silent, as Leviathan suddenly stops. It begins to writhe, twisting and contorting, and then it screams. The sound is piercing, ice hot, stabbing through eardrums as those created by Leviathan feel its pain. The scream lasts for only a moment, but for one man, it is long enough. And as Leviathan is changing forms and turning into all these different desolate shapes, we see this naked old man chained up to this archway, and this will be our first main character, Isidore Kowalski, the man who's escaped hell over 3 different times and actually created a book that would explain its inner workings, something that has actually spawned a bunch of different cults, as well as bringing our next 3 main characters together and a chance to finally stop Leviathan once and for all. And with this moment of excruciating pain for all the creatures down below, Isidore looks to his side and uses this moment to grab yet another puzzle box, knowing that if he solves it, that he can leave this hellish torture for once and all. Puzzle in hand, he flees for some dark corner, praying he'll have time. Think, Isidore. Think, old man. It's simple. It's just a toy. A game. He'll be here soon. Hurry and think, damn it. And as Isidore's making work of this black and gold puzzle in hand, the screaming of hell comes to a stop, and a cenobite returns to its captor to finish its pain. Isidore looks up, and suddenly a tendril of barbed wire and razors wrap around his body, and ignoring this pain, as he's been through this time and time again, knowing that if he can only make this thing click just a few more times, that it will finally leave his captivity, and the torture will finally come to an end. Slicing razor wire, wrapping tight, drawing thin red lines around his wrists. Tears stream down his face, his fingers grow numb as deadwood, desperately press and squeeze against the final piece of the puzzle, and somehow it turns. And as the final clicking of the puzzle happens, Isidore is transported directly in the center of a mental hospital. Now why this is, I have absolutely no idea. I don't know if maybe this is the original location of where he first saw this thing, but he lands right here, and what a perfect spot indeed, as maybe he can get some of the medical attention he might need, maybe some therapy. For God's sakes, you would assume that he would need this. But as he is transported, we see a nurse scream off in the distance, noticing this naked and bloodied up old man, and Isidore raises his hands up to the ceilings, and he screams for victory. And because of this sensational event, a news broadcast kind of goes out around the country, something about an old man suddenly appearing in the middle of this hospital, and while many people ignore this, the people that do see it know that this is the answer to all their problems, and this is how our three main characters are going to kind of conjoin into one inner working machine. And as a few days go past, two of the three main characters show up in this building looking for this specific man. Certainly, doctor. These things happen. That'll be fine. Goodbye. That was Dr. Pliers. He can't make it until the end of the week. Listen to me, Nurse Bratchett. I cannot wait. You listen, Mr. Lee. The patient. His name is Klowowski. Isidore Klowowski. That's ridiculous. If he were Isidore Klowowski, he'd be over 160 years old. I repeat, he has not been identified, and regardless, he cannot be released until he has been properly examined. But if it were up to me, anybody who would pull a stunt like he did should be kept in here for good. And as these two mysterious gentlemen arrive and are basically turned down immediately, we see Garcia the priest exiting the door. A man who has left his religion after being captured by the cenobite, as well as a scientist and atheist named Lee, a man who actually knows how to destroy these puzzle boxes. And this is where something a little strange happens, as all the main characters in this are pretty good people, and they are trying to basically save the earth from being attacked by these cenobites, by Leviathan itself, any longer. It is basically mad at this nurse for essentially doing her job and keeping this strange man away from these strangers. He basically offers her a chance to open one of these puzzles, asking her if she enjoys them at all. And when she denies this, he says, "Too bad." And Garcia and Lee exit the door, and I just thought this was a little odd that he would threaten her for a chance to be tortured down in hell for eternity, just for, like I said, doing her job. But as they leave the building, they get back in their car, and they leave, driving down a dark and dirt road, when suddenly a nun appears, and this is our third main character. A nun who has also solved one of these boxes and been sent down to Leviathan's wrath, and at one point thinking she was lost by God, realized that the cenobites and hell itself are two separate entities. She comes out screaming in the middle of the road, and they stop their car. "Evening, sister. Anything we can. I know why you're here. I came too. I've not slept. I thought I was free. Do you really think this man can help us? If he can't, no one can." "Dear Lord, all right. Park your car on the other side of the cemetery. I can get us through the back of the chapel, but be careful of the security." And with this, the fallen priest Garcia raises a Colt 45 up in the air, and he says security won't be a problem. And these other two bystanders just look incredibly shocked by this, and the nun merely asks him if he even believes in God at all. And why does he even wear this priest outfit? Garcia pops a new mag into this Colt 45, and he merely says that none of us are who we used to be, and the only thing I believe in is hell. And with this new ensemble of characters coming into the mix, we will be cutting back over to Isidore Klowowski, sitting in his padded room, and wondering if he ever escaped at all. He listens to it, the scream still ringing and buzzing like a wasp. It makes him smile, but then the doubt returns, worming through his mind. Did I turn that piece? Did I even escape? Do nothing, Isidore, except die. Suddenly, a chill, a finger of ice slides along his spine. Outside his door, he feels the eyes, the stare of its god, like gloved hands touching him, and he cannot breathe. And as Isidore is sitting in his cell, just wondering whether he ever escaped or not, sees the golden eyes of another pet of the cenobites reaching out for him. And suddenly, the glass shatters, and suddenly another tendril of razor wires and blades shoots through the window, piercing him directly in the calf and pinning him to the floor. And Isidore screams and screams and screams. And as he does so, the door bursts open, and the monster is finally in reach. Bound tight by the jacket straps, he wrestles, twisting fingers to his knees as his mind seizes an image from his past. An old book glimpsed in hell, painted bright with a sigil on a bloodied page. He bites down, chewing through the tongue until his teeth click together and his mouth fills with blood, salty and warm. And he begins to paint a symbol, a talisman, a temporary reprieve. And with this desperate attempt to shoo off this monster, we are cutting over to the next panel where we see a doctor and a nurse getting a little bit intimate. Mac, wait! What? Christ, Marcia, I only got a minute. I should be on duty. I know, but I just got this weird feeling that I should check on the new patient. Come on, Marsh, look, I even got the ribbed ones. Mac, I'm serious. And with this frustrated doctor finally giving into the ways of this nurse, or maybe doing the exact opposite, they go to Isidore's cell, and they realize that the door is completely burst over, and they see nothing but this bloodied old man sitting on the floor with blood pouring out of his mouth, and they both scream. When suddenly Garcia comes around the corner, breaking into this hospital with his Colt 45, he holds it up to their heads, and he says, "Nobody even blink." And with these two doctors at bay, Garcia picks Isidore up in his big sweeping arms, and they begin their mad dash outside to get away from all this, to get away from these pets of the cenobites, and to finally grab the man that they come for. And suddenly we're getting this giant panel of the creature up close and personal sitting up in a tree, and this is something that actually reminds me of one of the stories from the Books of Blood, a very interesting short story book by Clive Barker, one that I could highly recommend. But with the first story, we see a gang of hoodlums just kind of beating up this old man under a bridge, and when searching his pockets, they find this mysterious knot, something that casts such an obsession over one of them, and when he actually brings it home and he starts to work this new puzzle, something insanely sinister to the Hellraiser series but still being its own separate thing, unleashes a monster exactly like this from the mysterious knots of this man's pockets. And while I won't get too into that story, I just thought it was very interesting to actually put an image to that book, as this monster is almost exactly what this book describes. But as it's looking over the trees for its next prey, everybody else continues their mad dash through the cemetery. Like ghosts flashing in and out of sight, they weave between crosses of granite and tablets of marble. Here, they all think of death, of dropping to their knees and clawing open their wrist, or stuffing a gun barrel into their mouths. Why hadn't they done it already? Why weren't they buried deep, rotting beneath some carved stone? They were living on stolen time. And as they're running to their heart's content, somebody is finally captured, and it is one of the doctors. And as this monster finally peers its dreary head over these tombstones, yet another tendril of barbed wire and razors wraps around his ankle, and he is thrown to the floor, being dragged back and screaming for them to just kill him. Any kind of death besides being taken by this monster would be far better. But as the rest of them are looking back at this doctor being dragged, a feeling of relief rushes past their body, realizing that this man will be taken and that this will give them the time that they need to escape with Isidore Kowalski, with Lee, Garcia, and the nun. And in doing so, they make their way back to the car, driving down the dark and dirt roads once again to Isidore's old cabin, a place that has been sitting there for over 100 years and only 30 miles away, and underneath the second flagstone of the staircase, they find the key. They enter the building and they go down to the basement where Isidore is keeping all of his research of these hellish remarks, these symbols, all these different cantrips and spells. Lee grabs a book off the top and he begins to read. The spell, it's in Sanskrit, isn't it? Maybe we can. What is it you people want from me? What do we want? In 1870, you were one of the world's renowned occultists. In 1891, you disappeared. Then, in 1993, you appear out of nowhere and write a masterpiece called Of Hell, the Structure and Order of Evil. Some kids in the 60s built a whole cult around that book. I was searching for what happened to you when I finally found the puzzle that would show me. And when I escaped, I was paralyzed by my own guilt and the fear that God had forsaken me. But I found your book, and I began to understand to separate it from my faith. And this nun saying this is something that I very much appreciate, something that I've actually had a conversation with many of you down in the comments, is that Clive Barker's original vision for the Hellraisers and the dimension of the cenobites was something totally separate from any Christianity or any kind of religion, almost just a different dimension of beings that just kind of feed off the pain and suffering and pleasures of humankind. And I gotta say, Lana Wachowski, the creator of The Matrix, seems to know this universe very well. What we want and what we need is your help. I cannot help you. Something is happening in hell. Leviathan is preparing for something. You can't understand. I try and try, but I simply can't remember. And as everybody is just kind of standing around Isidore, just basically begging for any kind of answer, any kind of way to stop Leviathan, and to ensure that they will never be returned to this place, Isidore essentially just tells him that he doesn't even know if he originally solved the puzzle that let him escape. That possibly Leviathan has actually let him go in order for him to create this book and to actually draw more souls towards it in a very orderly fashioned way. He goes on to talk about how the last 50 years he has felt nothing but the pain and regret of sending all these different souls down to hell, for actually bringing these people the knowledge that would help them seek out all these different configurations. And with this, Lee has something to say, that it was possibly him that freed him originally. You said Leviathan stopped and screamed as though it were in pain. In your book, you wrote that the puzzles were actually parts of Leviathan. The day that you escaped, I destroyed one of those puzzles. I checked with the hospital. You appeared appeared at 5:37, about 2 minutes after I split the puzzle and it burst into flames. My God, child, if it's true, then I owe you more than excuses. We've no time to waste. Garcia, open that tip cabinet. There should be a saw inside. And with this request, Garcia does exactly that. He basically does not question this man whatsoever, and he grabs a saw. How only weapons crafted from Leviathan itself can pierce these creatures. That he has been down in hell so long that his bones are actually stained with the black pits of hell. That its evil is a physical thing, something that penetrates the body and soul and stains us from the inside. And with this, everybody holds Isidore down on the ground, pinning him against this table, and Garcia makes steady work of his leg. He feels the jagged blade against his shin. In hell, pain is life. Why does this feel so different and so real? The saw is shoved forward and jerked back. When it is done, he tells the priest to clean the bone. And as we get the shot of Garcia pulling this bone out of this man's leg, or I have no idea how he actually does this so efficiently. I don't know if he's like kind of peeling the skin away from it. A pain that Isidore has felt many different times in the captivity, as well as Garcia, as we will see in the next couple chapters. But the bone of Isidore is freed, and Garcia holds it up triumphantly. And what we see is this black and putrid bone that has come out of this man's body, something that has literally been stained by the evils of the cenobites. And as he holds it in the air, Isidore merely tells him to bring it to the sharpening stone and grind it down to a fine point. It makes a terrible sound, violence and pain spitting from the wheel like sparks. It is a sound they all know. And as Garcia is sharpening this black bone down to a point, they hear a loud crash from upstairs. And this is one point in the book that I was a little bit annoyed, as it is such a common horror cliche where they hear this giant crashing upstairs, knowing that this beast from the cemetery can only be drawing closer. And Lee, the atheist and scientist, decides that he is going to check this out. And walking up the stairs, he is greeted to another one of the Cenobite's pets. A new one that's monster design is actually pretty interesting, as its jaw is actually held up by wire, and it reminds me quite simply of Pinhead's right-hand man. And before we get any further, I also have one more shout out to do. If you guys could go and check out Wood Carving Man on not only TikTok, but YouTube. This happens to be one of my uncles, and he is a fantastic carver, and he actually gave me this for my birthday. This tiny little pinhead carving, and goddamn is this thing cute. And not only cute, but actually complete with real pins in his head. And along with this, he also created me the tiny baby from House of a Thousand Corpses, something that I was so incredibly stoked about. And I just have to let you guys know about him. Go check him out. He's a fantastic carver, and he makes all sorts of different pop culture reference carvings. And is somebody that puts so much work into his craft that it needs to be appreciated. But as Lee sees this monster coming, he heads back down the stairs. Mouth and nose stuffed and smeared with snack, it does not smell the man moving silently. And as this monster is looking around the room and everybody's being silent, Lee, Isidore, and the nun kind of work their way back to the cellar door, trying to make work of opening this thing, while Garcia stands back and waits for his chance to actually penetrate this monster with his new brandished weapon. Hallowed be thy name. Please, sister, you're making me really nervous. Hurry, Lee. Won't open. They're stuck. Thy will be done. Oh, move over and let me. And as they're trying to finagle this door open, it suddenly explodes, splinters flying across the room as the cemetery monster appears once again, grabbing Lee by the shirt and taking him for his own. And as everybody is screaming, Garcia comes into play. No one is going anywhere. And as Garcia says this, he lunges forward with his new weapon and pierces this creature right in the forearm, asking it, how does it feel? And with this sense of accomplishment, this cemetery monster is thrashing all around. It grabs the weapon and merely snaps it in half. And I gotta say, I was incredibly disappointed with this, as I thought this weapon would be used throughout the entire book, almost like a holy relic. But while it does do its job, it also brings them the knowledge of how to actually make the weapons that can take down these creatures of Leviathan. And it's something that we'll see as these stories continue, as they start sprinkling these little bits of Leviathan over bullets and all sorts of different weapons, and actually figure out a way to kill these monsters. But as the weapon does snap in half, the monster falls to the ground, and it begins its terrible stage of dissolving. The old man hears it scream, and it makes him smile. It has begun. They rush through the dark, through steaming puddles of dissolving flesh that fill the room with the smell of pork and sulfur. We'll have to carry Izzy. No, there's no time, Garcia. Give me your gun. I'm done. I've given you what you wanted. A means to fight, to survive. Now, I asked for what I want. And suddenly another monster appears, smashing through the doors and running straight for them. And Isidore knows that these three needed to take his knowledge and escape this place, even if it means leaving him behind. This is a man who is ready to give his life for just the image of any kind of victory. And with this, he tells them all to leave. Garcia runs up the stairs, and before he does so, he says, "Thank you, Isidore, and may you find peace in wherever you end up." And as Isidore is waiting for his final death, he thinks to himself, what is death? They must escape, he tells himself, and the gun drops into his lap. What is death anyway? He had drowned on his own blood, suffocated beneath a shovelful of his own own flesh. He stared rigid with pain at the peeled layers of his skin heaped in crumpled piles on the floor. And every time he died, there was nothing, no release of mystic energy, no soul climbing for the clouds. He understood. We were just meat, bone, and hair, and death. Death was just the end. But now there was something to live for. But for them to fight, they would need time to prepare. He had to make sure they could get away, one way or another. And with this approaching monster, yet another beam of barbed wire and razors pierces through his chest, pins him to the ground, and the monster begins to drag him slowly towards him. And Isidore, so accepting of this, just merely waits for his turn, waiting to get closer and closer to finally draw this gun on the monster. Whether this is crafted by Leviathan's parts, he realizes that he can buy these people more time. That's it, just a little closer. Yes, you see I have a gun, but you are not afraid. Do you not see my leg? But I will give anything to see you die. And Isidore launches himself onto the floor, shooting 4 bullets into the brain of this monster, and while it does make this creature stagger, he realizes that this is not going to do much besides give him just a few more moments before his inevitable death. But before his final taking can be punched, we see Garcia dropping down once again, stabbing this creature in the back with the broken pieces of the bone shard weapon that he created earlier. And once again, the new creature dissolves to the floor. Garcia, how? 4 gunshots. Nobody misses their head 4 times. Had to be sure. Had to be sure you could get away. We've got to get you to a hospital. Don't be foolish. Nothing can be wasted and more. Everything must be sacrificed. Every piece, every part, don't you see? We are only flesh and blood, but they are the strengths. No, our weapons. You must use them. Use them against it. Against Leviathan. And as Isidore is dying on the floor and Garcia and the rest of them flee the house, we see them running up this hill outside of the cabin as it merely bursts into flames, and we are greeted to the final words of Isidore before his untimely death. I die, Father. Please do as I ask and bury me, not in earth, but in Leviathan. Stick me like a knife in its guts, forever a part of its pain. Listen, Garcia, can you hear it? So loud, its scream, and so beautiful. And with Isidore's death, our 3 main characters are made their escape, and this is the end of the first chapter. Something that I found increasingly interesting, and I gotta say the rest of this book is also very fantastic, as we'll see them go to different parts of the world, kind of seeking out these different guardians, these buildings or creatures that kind of guard all the different configurations, as they get them one by one and bring them back to their own house to be split in half by a laser beam. And with each destruction, getting closer and closer to the defiance of Leviathan itself. And it's just an awesome story when it comes to HELLRAISER, something that actually gives us a little bit of hope. Instead of seeing soul after soul being sucked down into hell and just being tortured forever, we actually get a chance to see some people fight back. And it's an idea that I really have not seen in any of the HELLRAISER comics that I've read thus so far. And it just feels so refreshing. So, Jerry, thank you so much for even mentioning this book, as I probably wouldn't even know of its existence if you haven't said so long ago when I first started doing these videos. And I'm so glad I did pick this thing up. No matter how pricey this tiny book is, being about 40 to 60 pages, I gotta say, it was very worth it, and it's something that I highly recommend. It's something that I'm very proud to have on my shelf. And I think this may also be one of the first times that we've actually seen somebody who has actually escaped the clutches of the cenobites. Not only once, but like 3 different times, and actually being able to go out and write an entire book about the ordered structure of this thing. Spring Slaughter just has a lot going for it, and I hope it's something that you guys will enjoy. Like I said, we're going to split these into 3 different parts, so just keep your eyes out. It'll probably be about 1 a week, and I gotta say, I'm very sorry for the delay, everybody. Like I said, I recorded this video, and then suddenly when I go to edit it on my computer, I take the files off, and all the files were corrupted, and I was pretty bummed out about it. It was a take that I was pretty happy with. Usually I do these about 2 to 3 times, depending on how good the first one goes, and yeah, very disappointing when these things happen. So, but what can you do anyways? Thank you all for being so patient, and thank you all so much for watching. If you're new here, please go check out the other videos, like or comment and subscribe. Talk to the people down in the comments. We have a very cool small community of people that all enjoy comic books, things like that. I'm trying not to always do these dark ones, but it's just the things that always end up drawing my eye or whatever. So, yes, everybody, talk to me down below. Tell me what you think about the beginning of this thing, and tell me how you think this thing's all gonna end. I can tell you, it might be a little more shocking than you might expect, or maybe it's not. But anyways, everybody, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next episode of From the Heart, with more dark stories from the land of Leviathan, and possibly its downfall this time. Very exciting, I must say. But yes, I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I will see you later.